Thank you for joining us for the Dublin Vineyard podcast, and here is our latest sermon.
So, our word for today, the untroubled heart. So this is based on a series by a guy called John Ortberg. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He would have been mentored quite a bit by our old friend Dallas Willard. So not surprisingly, there's going to be sort of spiritual transformation and formation stuff in here. And, you know, from a Dublin Vineyard perspective, this is core to what we believe, core to the way we try to connect with Jesus. And over these couple of weeks, we're going to, here we go. So I've been told this forward is back and back is forward. There we go. So we will look at it in the next couple of weeks on the theme of the untroubled heart. We're going to look at three different ways. So awareness, because the beginning of all change starts with awareness. Abide. So how do we abide in Jesus in this journey, and what's the importance of that, the role of that? And practice, again, what's the role of that? Now, you will hear themes of abiding and practicing in each of the talks, and awareness in each of the talks, so it's not all separate, but the main theme of today is to try and grow our awareness of what it is that Jesus is saying on this particular topic. So I hope it's going to be practical. I've done more slides than I normally would do, so if you see anything that goes up there that you think could be helpful, take a photograph of it, because I'd like you to reflect on this during the week. And again, if we could kind of reflect on it over the 3 weeks, it would lend into that idea of practicing and abiding and becoming more aware. If you're anything like me, seeking an untroubled heart is probably worth doing. So, again, the prevalence of troubled hearts and troubled lives in our world today and in our personal lives today just seems to be more prevalent as time goes by, which means that these words that Jesus is telling us becomes more important. And we'll have a look at why that is. So, we'll start by having a quick reminder on spiritual transformation and spiritual formation that we may have heard before. And we'll use Dallas Willard to help us on that. So, back for forward. There we go. Okay. So Dallas Willard says that our hearts are constantly being formed, which is true. Spiritual formation in the way of Jesus is the process of transformation of our hearts in such a way that its natural behavior, this is our heart's natural behavior, comes to be the practices of Jesus done in the power of Christ or in the power of Jesus. The natural behavior of our heart in this space is to become the practices of Jesus done in the power of Jesus. That's an incredible statement. So the Bible says, you know, again, that didn't change, did it? Yes. So, what are we saying about transformation? And we're summarizing what the Bible is saying here. We're saying that transformation happens to us when we spend time with Jesus, reading and thinking about Scripture, and practicing and doing the things that Jesus did. It's the basis of the experience of experiencing an untroubled heart. In fact, it's the basis of becoming the person that Jesus would like us to become. When we do these things regularly, we begin to change supernaturally. So again, we've used this analogy in the past, you know, of standing in the sunshine. So I intentionally go out and I stand in the sunshine. When I do that, my skin color changes. I intentionally make time to go out and stand in the sun. When I'm doing that, and that's all I'm doing, my skin color changes. So let's say for George Clooney, he becomes a very attractive brown color. When I do it, I become a less attractive red color. But the same thing is happening to both of us, and we're often mixed up in terms of how we look. His hair's a little bit shorter than mine at the moment, but with pressure from my home life at the moment, that might change. So, when I intentionally make time to be with Jesus every day, my heart transforms. It changes. The person I am changes into the person that Jesus would like me to become, or has intended me to be. So, I'm going to get you to reflect here for a minute. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how troubled has your life been over the past couple of days, or weeks, or months? Just reflect on that for a minute. So in terms of troubles, they can come from many sources. People in our lives, work, unemployment, failed relationships, hoped for relationships, world news, neighborhoods, sport teams, or teams you play for, even teams we follow, being part of minority groups, physical health, mental health. Just think, where have your troubles been coming from? What's been troubling your heart? Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the trouble, or how was your heart responding to that? Was it a peaceful heart? Did you have a peaceful heart in those times? You see, in my head, it sounds like a really stupid question. How can you have a peaceful heart when your life is in turmoil, when your life is in trouble? It just doesn't register for me. And you know I'm really smart, and it doesn't register for me. Don't laugh at that, please. And yet, Jesus says something contradictory to what I think is just stupid. It couldn't happen. He says, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. And what does that mean? Well, look, what we could do is very easily sort of put that into the category of, say, one of these greeting cards we see in a shop. Like, it could be something like, listen, you studied really, really well, you're going to pass your exams. Or you trained really hard, so now you will get onto the football team. Something along those lines. And people say them meaning well and wishing you well. But often we let those slide by because we kind of see them and know them as nice things to say, but not actually real things. Why does those nice words immediately assume I'm going to get a job? So we've got to be careful when we read things like this. If Jesus is who he says he is, if he said these words, well then, these are true. John Ortberg tells a story of when he was speaking with Dallas Willard once, and John Ortberg was going through a particularly difficult time in his family at that stage. He describes it as being a lot of pain in his family, spilt over into other areas of his life. He was struggling with his ministry and wasn't sure what people even thought about him or how effective he was in that. He says he was experiencing a lot of anxiety and worry and experiencing a lot of pain. So he looked at Dallas Willard and said, I'm doing okay under the circumstances, which seems like a reasonable response for me. And Dallas Willard says to him is, well, what are you doing under there? And it kind of sounds like a flippant remark, but actually, Dallas Willard knew that we're not meant to live under the circumstances of the state of the life that we're experiencing. We're not supposed to live under the circumstance of what's going on around us. John Ortberg then says, as followers, we are meant to live immersed in the care and watchful love and protection and guidance and power and strength of our God in the midst of a deeply troubled world. And this is a deeply troubled world. And some of us here have deeply troubled lives right now. And it appears from what Jesus is saying is that we don't have to live experiencing the untroubled heart in these troubled times. So a good example of this is the Last Supper. So at the Last Supper, Jesus is talking to the guys around the table, and he says something that just rocks their world. He says he's not going to be around for much longer. In fact, it's pretty imminent that he's leaving. And I was trying to think is if somebody who meant everything to me, because the apostles put everything into him. If they were betting men, they've put all their money on this horse. So this was everything to them. And what has happened is the person who's everything to them has said, I'm out of here. See ya. Jesus says, children, I am with you only for a short time longer. You are going to look high and low for me. But just as I told the Jews, I'm telling you, where I go, you are not able to come. This must have just been a bombshell for them. Simon Peter says to him, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus answered, where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will later. Peter said to him, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. And Jesus replied, will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, a rooster will not crow until you deny me 3 times. Look at the emotion that's in Peter right now. He is speaking emotion. He's speaking, I will do anything for you. Jesus is seeing something else in that moment and knows that's not going to happen the way he thinks. But it's Peter's response which just shows that he is clearly really troubled. I will lay my life down for you. In John 14:3-6, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I am coming again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you also will be. And you know where I am going. I love this answer. And Thomas looks at him and says, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How do we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to me except through the Father. No one comes to the Father except through me. So Thomas is really confused. I have no idea where you're going. I have no idea what way you're going to go there. So there's utter confusion, deep upset, frightening and troubling experience for the disciples. And right now, some of us may be experiencing frightening and troubling times. If we haven't, we will. And if we aren't, we have. That's just the world and the life that we have on this planet. They knew that their lives, and Jesus knew, that the lives of these guys were going to change dramatically. But the life of Jesus was going to change dramatically also. And it's in the midst of this, in fact, it's just after he says to Peter about, the crow won't, whatever it is, the rooster. It's a crow in this country. We call it a rooster for the sake of the visitors. So the rooster to crow 3 times. So, and in that horrible moment, imagine hearing that from Jesus. It must have been a bit of a sickener. And he says, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. The word believe is better translated as trust. And trust is an active word. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You trust in God, trust also in me. And I tried to think, how do I, because they're both kind of active words as well, but I tried to give an idea. So when we were kids, often my dad would catch us as we jump off a high wall. Now, I don't remember that, but I think I remember the girls, my younger siblings, and he would stand there and he'd hold his arms up and they would leap off the wall and jump into his arms. For me, I believed he was going to catch them, but when they were standing up on the wall about to jump, I kind of see that as they trusted he was going to catch them. Because I believed he could, but they believed that he will. Otherwise, they shouldn't have jumped off the wall. But anyway, so as followers of Jesus, I've just skipped a bit here. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, this means that Jesus is saying 2 things to the guys here. He's saying is, you have troubled hearts. But he's also telling them something else. He's given them an invitation into what they should do about those troubled hearts. To trust in him. Trust in God. So, we kind of see this in action with Jesus in Gethsemane. So, Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, sit here for a while sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Now, if you had an idea, which he did, of what was coming, I think that's an understatement. Sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. So what does Jesus do at this moment? Well, Jesus turns to God. But it's a very sort of natural response he has. He does like his friends to be with him, but it's his natural day-to-day response of turning to God that is the dominant behavior or activity that he takes place for him. For me, I might go up and get under the covers in the bed. But for him, he does something different. So what's happening here? Jesus is making us aware of something that he sees as a reality for our lives. He's telling the apostles that despite the deeply troubling times that they were all experiencing, they do not have to have troubled hearts. So what's the big deal about the heart? So we'll have a quick look at how God has formed us and created us. Again, this is something we would have covered. And in Mark 12, covered previously. So Mark 12:30. Lord, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. So these are all elements of us that are absolutely vital in terms of connecting with God and living the way God would like us to live. A guy called Andy Crouch says that the best way from a biblical perspective for us to think about a person is to understand that we were formed with a body, a heart, a soul, a mind, and strength, which combined are designed to love deeply and be deeply loved. Designed to love deeply and be deeply loved. Dallas Willard teaches a lot about the heart. And he says that the heart is the center or core of a human being and the part to which every other aspect of the person owes its proper functioning. We are governed from this place. So the heart seems to be a particularly important thing. Proverbs say that the heart is where the flow is the source of the flow of the springs of life. It is the control center, the source of every thought, the home of our passions, and the place of our decisions. So what's the big deal about the heart? The heart is central to who we are as human beings. When our heart is troubled, it impacts the whole person and ultimately has the effect of disconnecting us from ourselves and disconnecting us from our awareness of the presence of God. It doesn't disconnect us from the presence of God, but disconnects us from our awareness of the presence of God. It affects everything about who we are, what we do, how we think, our emotional energy levels, our relationships with God, our relationships with others. So if we go back to the idea of the card, the greeting card, Jesus' words weren't nice words. He knows the impact of the troubled heart. He's bringing that to our attention. And as we unpack what other scholars have seen or learned, it disconnects us from God and it disconnects us from our own lives. This is not a place Jesus wants us to be. So, in this moment, for the apostles, in this moment of having troubled hearts, I kind of squeezed that in. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You trust in God, trust also in me. There are two key observations here then. Do not let your hearts be troubled. So, it kind of feels like we have some power in this, some way of influencing this. If I don't want my skin to turn red, stay out of the sun or put on sun cream, but stay out of the sun. I have some influence on whether my skin turns red or not. How I spend my time and where I spend my time is important. The second half of that is you trust in God, trust also in me. This is something we do. We intentionally do. We're only apprentices here, by the way. We're learning as we're going along. If this is not natural to you, that's okay. If I ask most of us to go out and run the marathon, it won't be natural to you either. That doesn't mean you can't run a marathon. It just means you got to practice running the marathon. We have to practice trust in God. So we have a say in this, and our say in how we do it directs us to the way of Jesus. If Jesus is who he says he is, and if God is who he says he is, then we must be proactive So we must practice active trust in order to have our troubled hearts, to have untroubled hearts in troubled times. I'm going to say that again. If I can find it. Yeah. Then we must practice active trust in order to have untroubled hearts in troubled times. Can you see the importance of us playing a part here? And we know elsewhere in the Bible and from our teachings before on transformation and practice is that we can't just dip in and out of this. Jesus' practice was, when he was in trouble, was immediately to turn to God. My practice is to go and pull the covers over my head. One of them is a good practice and one of them doesn't help at all. So, we have been given the ability through our relationship with Jesus and his faithfulness to experience lives not defined by the circumstances around us, but defined by the promises of Jesus. We have that capacity within us to experience that. So if you're sitting there going, I never experienced it, just listen to these words today. Listen to where Jesus highlights it, which is in a room where people are in a mess with trouble at right this moment, where he himself is experiencing deeply troubled experiences coming ahead of him, or troubling experiences coming ahead of him. And yet, this is what he's saying we can do. This is what he's saying can be our experience. So on a personal note, as I learn more about following Jesus, I begin to understand more about his power and promises, and they become realities, and how they become realities in my life. Part of that is to do what we're doing here, is to read it. Say, gosh, he's saying that we can have an untroubled heart, but I don't experience that at all. He's bringing that to our awareness right now to say, this is a place you can be. And the more I practice, so this is knowledge, if you like. And the more I practice active trust, the more I allow him to be able to transform me. It's about him and me. Him doing the work, me being in the right place. That's how I get my red skin. That's how I change spiritually. So, for the coming week, if the band want to come up. For the coming week, sorry. Okay, so for the coming week, I would like you to do the following. Each day, and put it in your phone now if you're going to forget it. Book yourself some time each morning, each day. Each day I want you to sit 2 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, half an hour, up to you. If your mind goes all over the place, it doesn't matter. I can be standing in the sun thinking about football, I'm still going to go red. This is our hearts towards Jesus. This is where he works. Sit and reflect on the question, what if this is really true? If your life is in turmoil, try and gather the strength that God has given us to even ask the question, because that's going to be even a hard thing to do. We want to practice the presence of God this week. So, if you're not used to that, if God always feels a little bit far away, and you're in your kitchen, imagine the table is God. Act as if he's in the house. Do you ever, I don't know what your family's like, but when we were growing up, if somebody important came into the house, we all behaved ourselves. And when they left, we went back to normal. Imagine Jesus is with you. How would you behave if he was really, really with you? Really with you. Remind yourself every day that you should step into trust and ask Jesus, that looks like it's written down wrong. What does that even say? Remind yourself every day that you should step into trust and ask Jesus to step into your heart and for you to step into his. Step into his heart and you step into his. Do those three things. If you've taken photos, reflect on some of the scriptures or the notes. Some of the people that write about all this are really, really wise. That's why I just quote them. It's much easier. Okay? There's really wise words in there, and there's good scripture. Next week, we're going to look at abiding, but I'd be really keen next week to hear how it is you got on this week.
Thank you for joining us today. May the Lord's word strengthen and inspire you throughout the week, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless.